Chapter 4. The Sense of Reason. Given all the problematic behavior around us, and by logical extrapolation everywhere else in the world, it is not surprising that the latter is a concentrated point in the immensity of the cosmos, where there are all kinds of individuals, very distinctly different from each other, and reacting in an extremely nuanced manner on absolutely all subjects. This is due to the fact that they allow themselves to be guided primarily, mainly, or even only by their primary feelings and emotions such as joy, desire, envy, jealousy, lust, anger, fury, hatred, etc. To clarify that logically, in this case, the negative dominates the positive, the first therefore always prevailing over the second, as a consequence of a psychological deficiency precisely on the psychosensory, psychosensitive level, affecting the abilities to properly evaluate, analyze, discern, judge the situations with which they are confronted at every moment of their existence, of course in full awareness of themselves. Thus, any woman, any man, can appear in good mental and physical health and give the impression of being in full possession of her or his means on a psychological and physical level. But even if this is not visible at first glance, the psychosensory psychosensitive deficiency affects more or less absolutely all individuals. Almost no one can be impeccable on this level, since it requires perfect knowledge and mastery of all aspects of the terrain in question. However, some have less deficiency than others, and this is what makes all the difference between individuals and all the nuances of this world on the scale of humanity. Some are able to evaluate different informations and situations better than others, to better analyze, discern, and judge them, hence the different character from one person to another, but above all, hence the mutual misunderstandings between those with psychosensitive senses sufficiently developed to properly evaluate, analyze, discern, and judge, and those who are not able to do so since they have precisely these same senses more or less insufficiently developed. Wisdom, seriousness, awareness of the ins and outs, the sense of moral responsibility, the inner revelation of values, virtues, and principles of higher, transcendent, and universal order on the one hand, and lightness, frivolity, and complacency in the ambient mediocrity, the non-questioning of dogmas and paradigms, the difficulty to understand the higher order things, leads to all kinds of problems between individuals, some of the order of bickering between children or adults, others extremely serious, which can even go so far as to call into question the security and survival of humanity when it comes to the ruling spheres in the world. The psychosensitive sense of reason is what allows us to properly evaluate, analyze, discern, and judge. Without it, there is no point in hoping that others will show up in a meaningful way. The psychosensitive senses are, in fact, interdependent on each other. Therefore, once the sense of reason is sufficiently developed, the others are as well. Reason allows us, in fact, to rationally analyze the world around us, to discern truth from falsehood, good from bad, to distinguish what is right from what is wrong, goodness from evil, to choose the least worst and the preferable to the worst and the avoidable, to adopt an objective approach to our ethical decisions, to evaluate the consequences of our actions, or to temper, master, control our affect, and therefore our emotions and feelings. There is an interaction between these and our reasoning. It is undeniable. They influence, in fact, our judgments, our decisions, and our choices. However, the more structured and solid the sense of reason, the less emotions and feelings take over reason. Indulging in black anger, an exacerbated anger, even bestial, in a fit of madness, a burst of blood, losing control over our emotions, our thoughts, and our body, following an event that would take place before our eyes, or which would affect us personally. For example, an incivility, a provocation, a word, or any act without any attack on the dignity and physical integrity of others or ourselves is the best way to do serious errors of evaluation, making the wrong decisions, and acting counterproductively. In this specific case, it is not a question of tolerating such a thing, of suffering from anger, but simply of channeling it, of controlling it, of containing it in order to keep one's senses and one's ability to reason, therefore to think logically and act effectively. It is therefore imperative to be sensitive and receptive to the universal psychosensory frequency, to allow the character to be equipped with psychological shields on all sides, and primarily that of reason. The sense of reason introduces universal moral values. It allows us to understand what they are, as well as to realize their supreme importance in absolutely all aspects of life on Earth, as elsewhere in the entire universe, where a form of sensitive life could be found on the universal psychosensitive field. That of reason is decisive in shaping a structured, balanced, mature, and responsible character, but also serious, logical, healthy, and fair. It is indeed essential to avoid making this world a permanent hell until the end of time. To illustrate this point, we can take the example of a man who has only himself to prevent himself from causing the annihilation of an entire people by an unconventional method, to cause such a powerful nuclear explosion that it could cause the definitive extinction of absolutely all life on Earth, or even extrapolating to the paroxysm, cause such a cataclysm at the limit of the imaginable and of a completely different nature than what we know to date, that it could annihilate the entire universe. So what could stop such an individual from taking action? What could influence his decision? What could affect his state of mind? The one and only thing that would stop him in his destructive momentum is reason, in short, the criterion for judging what is good and what is not. Because it is reasoned not to harm the physical integrity of other innocent people around the world. It is good sense not to subject others to what we would not like to suffer in return, and to always favor life, because the latter is logically the greatest wonder of the entire universe. We own this wonder, each of us, from the beginning of our existence, from our first heartbeat, and it is priceless and has no equivalent. Reason is at the heart of every existential question of the past, the present, and the future. For example, is it reasoned, and therefore reasonable, to continue to produce while polluting the environment and the atmosphere? Is it reasoned to persist in giving importance to totally outdated concepts? Is it reasonable to invest more than indecent capital in armament and destruction rather than in the healthy and peaceful development of humanity and in the preservation of life in general, notably through the promotion and the prioritization of good mental and physical health of individuals and facilitated access to universal knowledge of life, mainly through axiological, preventive, and natural medicine, and all other higher and priority sciences, and neutral of all excess, of all abuse, of all fanaticism? Is it reasonable to continue to tolerate that the worst individuals perverted by money, power, sex, or the religions of men rule this world? One decisive thing definitively clarifies these questions and so many others from every point of view, and this thing is deep within each of us. Ensuring we develop it makes us real human beings, worthy of the name, capable of the best for the good of humanity. Someone with a developed sense of reason is someone who takes into account the factors that characterize a given situation, the ins and outs, and who decides in view of the most favorable outcome for the proper functioning and development of life, health, and therefore everything that is universally good, positive, constructive, responsible, reasoned, logical, healthy, just, ethical, moral, and virtuous, as well as everything that is fine, peaceful, natural, true, worthy, honest, exemplary, honorable, respectful, benevolent, wise, and transcendent. A human who uses reason aims to provide the best solution to a problem, the least negative possible, the most devoid of egocentrism and therefore of selfish interests. Reason allows a fair view of the world, and those who use it are divinely exemplary and carry a universal and eternal message that resonates across space and time. The sense of reason allows humanity to be dignified on a collective level, worthy of the responsibilities incumbent on it in an inevitable, inexorable, eternal way. Reason sheds light on the meaning of life, the conception and very existence of everything. It is the essential tool for judging things as they should be in order to provide a logical, healthy, and fair solution to a given problem. It is interesting and at the same time incomprehensible for a sane mind to note to what extent so many individuals are not capable of facing the truth when it comes out in plain sight and shines the brightest like sunlight in broad daylight, nor even to admit a reality when it is the most blatant and undeniable, nor even to draw a healthy conclusion when it is nevertheless the most obvious and logical. Reason would dictate that individuals stop fighting over money, power, recognition, a piece of land here and there. But this is sometimes extremely difficult, or even impossible, given the powerful antagonisms that exist on Earth, just like the deception, dishonesty, vice, malevolence, sarcasm, lies, or even the distortion of the truth that some demonstrate and use the worst stratagems to achieve their ends. And this in total inversion of universal values and principles. However, the ideal would be for all those involved in deep disagreements to start discussing peacefully on a moral, serene basis. Argument against argument, solution for solution. To revolutionize the approach to others, of a preventive nature, as well as medical, technological, agrarian, or environmental, with the exclusive aim of preserving life, the living, nature, and innocence, taking care to eliminate from the equation anything that could hinder them. The sense of reason is a fundamental, essential, constitutive sense for harmony between humanity and the world of the living in general, but also the elements, nature, and the fundamental and universal interactions with the latter, and this in the broadest possible and imaginable sense. Reason requires us to consider life and innocence as the priority of all that exists. It therefore obliges all those involved in a possible disagreement to come to an agreement with the aim of providing a peaceful and definitive solution to a given problem. Of course, to the extent of the possible and feasible, but especially above all and inevitable within the framework of what is rational and logical. To embody someone moral, therefore a human being in the noblest sense of the term, someone who follows the path of wisdom, of intellectual maturity, someone who makes the most balanced choices possible in life, for oneself as for others, in phase with the values, virtues, and principles of higher, transcendent, and universal order, someone who fights for the preservation of nature and the protection of the living, of innocence and anything harmless, someone who serves humanity rather than serving his own interests in a selfish and self-centered way. It is imperative to use good sense and therefore reason and logic. Without reason, there is no logic and vice versa, and both are essential to develop the moral sense to its peak.